Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
How are you?
I'm all right. They're doing construction on our building.
Oh, really? Somebody's moving
And
in?
well, it's perpetual. Right now, I think that they're working on the facade of it, the building.
Okay.
Uh, and so if you look really carefully at the very bottom, they've done some priming. I thought they were gonna paint it that super white color, and I was like, this is not gonna be good. Thankfully, I found out it's priming, but what has been
Wow.
happening, little pieces have been falling off the building. Just because it's old and it's a safety hazard. So for a long time, we've had scaffolding up
Right.
to kind of
Right.
protect from that. I think now they've started the project of cleaning up the facade and working to restore it to the original look, while maintaining the safety standards needed. So that is, it sounds like they're just drilling. But I don't know if sometimes it's like, is it outside? Is it inside? My colleagues have had people on scaffolding like right outside their windows the last couple days, so it makes me
Oh,
think it's
wow.
outside. But apparently there's also construction on one of the floors, so
All right.
never a
Good
dull
morning.
day. How are you?
I'm doing well. We are 3 days past Lloyd and it's really kicking in.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna miss him terribly, I tell you that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
For sure.
most of the folks are at a conference this morning.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to go to this. I went to the last one and I got another one coming up in June. So I'm like, I'm sitting it out. I got too much to think about and read and catch up on. So,
Mm. What conference is this?
the one they're in now is some type of housing conference in Raleigh. Let's see. I'll tell you in a second. Good morning, Sharita.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. How are you?
Putting one foot in front of
Hmm.
the other.
Russ is coming in now. Good morning, Russ.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So Anthony, are you the designated survivor?
You mean from the conference this week or from
Yeah.
yes. Yes. And Eliza, it's the National Community Development Association Conference.
Cool.
And they are trying to see what they're focused on. Got Nicole coming in.
I pulled it up. It looked interesting. I know it's in Raleigh, so I figure that means everybody hops in the car and goes.
Well, because a lot of people already live over there, most of them just stay at home and drive locally.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. I'm like not as aware of the, oops, sorry, y'all, conference circuit. So I'm always thankful when people share with me that side of the world.
Well, I will put in the chat. Good morning, Jonathan. Hope you're okay. I'll put in the chat the agenda for the conference just so you can check out what folks are doing over there.
Thank you. Hey, Jonathan. Hey, Nicole.
Hey, Eliza. Hey, Anthony.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning.
Good. Hey, Nicole. Hey, Sharita. Hey, Russell. Happy Friday.
Good morning, everyone.
Sharita, it is 10 a.m. and we do have, I believe, everyone here. So you have a quorum.
Thanks, Anthony. Wonderful. Well, welcome everybody. We are yet again at another exec meeting. Our agenda is short, but I think we'll have some really good conversation. We were speaking earlier, I'm not sure if everybody was on the call, that the rest of the CD team is at a conference in Raleigh. That's the link that Anthony just put in the chat. So Anthony is our support today. We're super thankful to have him. And Lloyd has officially transitioned. So lots of new things on Anthony's plate, it sounds like.
Yes.
So we're thankful for you. And as many people have extended grace to me, I am sure, I mean, I will definitely be extending grace as
Thank
we
you.
learn together, right? So,
Thank
but
you.
my feeling is that we're very blessed to have you, and we're excited to have you take this on full time.
Thank you.
Fill some of those roles that Lloyd was doing. All right, I am a little behind on things. So Russ, I guess I should say, I'm calling this meeting to order at 10:02. Trying to do a better time of saying that. Russ, do
Can I
we
look
have,
for 1 second? Have we activated recording? I don't remember saying
The
Oh, it is
rec
recording. Okay,
the
sorry.
recording is activated, but I don't know how to turn on the AI feature if that's something everybody's interested in.
that might
So
be what does the transcript.
We were
yeah.
getting transcripts before the AI piece, so
Okay.
Okay.
at least I thought so. So I'm not sure.
Yeah. Hopefully it's just set up right. I'm pretty sure Melissa set it up right, or Keisha.
Right.
Great.
Sorry to interrupt, Eliza.
No, that's fine. I am a little behind is what I was saying, and I'm not clear on if we received our April exec minutes. So I
We
don't,
did not. We're
okay.
waiting. There was an issue with the transcript that was sent, only went for the first 7 minutes. And
Yeah.
so I'm hoping that we have that transcript. Otherwise, I will watch the whole last meeting and do it that way. We'll go old
I
school.
literally thought I was going crazy. I was like, where are the minutes? I don't remember seeing them.
Yeah.
No,
You've
and
done such a
I was waiting
phenomenal
to hear
job on
back.
them.
They've got to figure out if they can be created or not. And yeah, so my apologies.
No, it's fine. So we'll move that to our next exec meeting. So we will not do item 2. I did send an email early this morning with an amended agenda, not early, about an hour ago. We have Colin shared, and let me also just say I am working off just my laptop because we're doing construction on my building, and normally I have another screen. So bear with me as I find the email. Here we go. I did pull it up. Okay, so Colin shared with me that we do need to appoint Anthony to the HMIS Implementation Executive Committee. Since Lloyd retired, we need to do that to fill his spot. And Durham, Orange, and Balance of State have 2 seats each. The seats have been held by people at CDD, as a lot of the exec committee work is related to budget evaluation of the HMIS lead agency and other things like that. The COC does have representatives on the full committee. So that's the background that was shared with me. I can open for questions. I would need Anthony's support on answering those, though.
Oh, I was ready to move.
Yeah. So any questions? We'll pause there for a second. Great. Okay, I'll take a motion.
I move that we accept Anthony as I guess he's the replacement representative since Lloyd has transitioned to the
It's the HMIS.
HMIS Advisory Board.
HMIS
Advisory Board.
Advisory Board.
Mhm.
Thank you, Sharita. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Thanks, Jonathan. Please vote in the chat. Yes, no, or abstain. Hi, Ebony, welcome. Yay, lots of
Thank
yes for
you.
Anthony's. Love it. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for that. And then our next item is the May HSAC agenda planning. Normally Colin leads us through that. And so we meet before these meetings to just chat about the agenda for these meetings. And we went ahead and offered some thoughts about what needs to be done, what could be done. Anthony, do you have that spreadsheet that you can share, or do you want me to just drop what I have in the chat?
Nope, I think this will work.
Great.
Let's see.
Perfect.
Does this look right?
Yeah.
Perfect. That's
This is old, so let me go down to here.
great. Okay, so this would be our June. No, it would be our May HSAC meeting. I'm trying to move us quickly to the summer. Let's see. So on here is the HMIS data exploration piece. We had talked about that in our last exec meeting, and we had voted yes to explore. Colin was going to look into if it's a voting item or not, but regardless, we felt like it'd be important to bring that just as an update to full HSAC. So that's that item. The Housing First report. Okay. That
So
might
I
get
don't know the status of that yet. I know that was one of the last things that Lloyd was trying to finish before retiring. So I have not received anything yet, and I don't know exactly what the status is on that.
Okay, I do believe he finished the report. If not, I can probably finish it. I would have to go back and look at his email from the last day, because he literally worked up until the last minute. So I believe he finished it, but I am not prepared to discuss it today, unless there are specific questions maybe that you would have about what it says. Did he not do like an overview? Because I don't usually come to these meetings.
Yeah, so I think he didn't do an overview for us, but
Okay.
this May item that we're looking at is not for exec, it's for full HSAC.
Got it.
And
Okay.
so I think what we could talk about is, do we want something for us before it goes to full HSAC? That's certainly something we could talk through. The other piece that I don't want to lose is that we didn't really get through Lloyd's presentations last meeting. And
Okay.
I don't want to I don't want to skip that and come back to it a month later. I would rather prioritize that this May if possible. So some of the things that Colin and I listed, and I see also HSAC retreat is on here. So maybe we can list everything and then prioritize from there. We talked about the system performance piece, and maybe allocating 30 to 40 minutes on that. So it would be more than just data, and adding more story and connection there, and opportunity for good questions and conversation. And then the other piece that was big that's not on here is the governance changes that I mentioned very briefly at the end of the meeting because we ran out of time, but there was not time for a discussion. And so that may end up being a discussion item, and folks may not feel prepared to vote, and we might need to push the vote, but also if folks are prepared to vote, I think we can do that next meeting. And we were imagining another 30 minutes for something like that.
Okay. Eliza, help me out.
Yeah.
So the performance management quarterly is what we would move, or I'm sorry, would you?
Let's just list everything under May to start, and then we'll move stuff from there. So,
Okay.
let's add, system performance. So I guess Colin would do that moving forward, and then the governance changes, let's put that in for 30 minutes.
And I'll just come behind Liza. I mean, Anthony, we're not sure who does presentations going forward, so we're
Yeah.
not saying it has to be Colin.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we'd love to hear from more of the team. So just to say,
Yeah, so
Thank you.
maybe that's a good point. Let's take Colin's name off. And y'all, as you're figuring out roles and where it makes sense.
It might even be, sorry.
Go ahead.
I mean, as an agenda item, it might really be valuable to have a simple PowerPoint that we could all then keep or distribute that's like post Lloyd, who's doing what. Because I think we have some sense of it that we're piecing together, but really knowing where you all are concentrating and who to go to for what would be really helpful in a way, because right now it seems like we're coming out of this period where everybody kind of goes to everything, but just one or two people tend to be the ones talking.
Yep.
And I know that we're looking to see with, as the committees regroup and we regroup, as with many of our boards, we have certain staff that are the main liaisons. How's that all going to work? So
Yeah, good point. Great. So we imagine the HMIS data exploration taking about 10 minutes as just an explanation, maybe an approval. And then the only other thing I had on my list that is not necessarily for May, but I wanted to check in on, was we had talked about a future planning for a Medicaid transformation presentation. I was just curious. I don't imagine that's for May, but just curious where we are with if that can happen. Yeah, I was already
just curious. Is that still relevant for us now? Will Duke still have that program? Because I was under the impression that the state actually swapped it to rural communities only, that some of those things were going through. So I'm just curious, is that still relevant? When was the last time you talked with Fred?
At least I've been more engaged probably with Ann Oshel, and I haven't heard of that change for me.
Okay.
I know that during the pilot, they only did rural areas. But I haven't heard that they were going to limit it to rural areas going forward. I can try and ask her quick.
I would just say getting an update on kind of what did the state do? What is the outcome? And will Durham be rolling something out? Because I want to say that I heard murmurs that maybe Durham wasn't going to be testing, doing the next round yet. And I could be mistaken, but I would definitely say check.
Great.
And Eliza, for this future section, the first
Mhm.
bullet and the last bullet appear to be the same.
Ah, yes,
Do we
thank you.
need to take one of these off? Okay.
Yeah, let's take the first one off because the second looks like it adds a little more
More
data.
details.
Yeah.
Right.
Great. So just wanted to make sure that that thread continues. If Durham is still viable, I think that there's a lot of opportunity to think about connections and across systems, and that always takes time. So anything else that we want to elevate for the May agenda list before we think about what really makes sense for May and what we should move to June?
Anthony, is there, I know there's been prior conversation of, for the big COC application, which I know
Mhm.
kicks in sometime over summer,
Mhm.
more pre-work this year in terms of what you all
Yes.
will need from staff and different pieces. Is it too soon in May to kind of give I know we probably won't know the timeline for the whole thing because it's sort of like surprise, and then everybody has to get it all done in 60 days. Is it too soon in May, or does it need to be maybe in June where you all kind of talk about what your process is and what you'll need from any of the participating agencies if they're chosen to continue participating?
Well, excellent question. Thank you. So the pre-application process is being unfolded hopefully soon. However, people who are already receiving, organizations that are already receiving funds or those that were approved to receive funds, whether or not they received them last year, will be exempt from the pre-application process. So we're really looking for new organizations this year to go through that process. Aside from that, the other folks like, your organization and others, will just join the full process when it starts. And we expect that process to start around the normal time, maybe, is it July, end of June, July, something like that. But we don't have any word yet, of course, on that. I hope that answered your question. Did it?
Yeah, I think the only other piece is just once you know who's in it, us just having more clarity on what you need from all of us, because it tended to be sort of a, hey, who wants to get together and have a discussion about what we're going to write, and the date's set, and it happens so late, it's hard for us to kind of do workflow planning for people.
Got it.
So
Okay.
that was if you're making changes or you have a sense of like, okay, as you communicate with new groups or existing groups, like if you're chosen, you're going to kind of need to help with the writing and just something, just not figuring it all out this year, but just maybe a step forward kind of piece of some
Yes.
understanding.
Thank you for helping me get clearer on your question, Russ. I would like to see us have a process where we start earlier. I know when I started the middle to end of July, the process was literally just beginning. And we had sort of 5 meetings and then it was kind of over. And I felt like the meetings were very complicated. And the meetings were also, there was a lot of material trying to be covered in each meeting that I thought, watching it on a screen as somebody scrolls is very, very difficult. So I'm hoping to put together a series of meetings where we do it more in chunks. And maybe we talk about it more than we try to read through it. And everybody just kind of starts as a precursor to look at what we said last year. And then we kind of have meetings to talk about the updates. So yes, I hope for a better process this year and one that will start a little bit sooner, because I think we can safely start sooner than we did last year. So, thank you.
So would it be helpful if I tagged this as an item to talk about in our next exec meeting? And potentially something that we would bring in June to the full HSAC?
You
Just
mean the
doesn't get
collaborative
lost.
application?
Yeah, this conversation and these points that Russ is just sharing around like what to expect around the collaborative application. Like, is it helpful to have it as an item on the next exec meeting to circle back to this conversation?
Yes, I would say so.
Okay.
Because that'll get me prompted in the right
We
way.
can do
So,
that, and then we can also, so
yes.
yeah, we can do that, and we can also plan for potential time in our June meeting, because I know July we don't meet.
Okay. Is it, so this, I am
Yeah, why
putting
don't you
here
make a
maybe?
June? Maybe just make a
Oh,
June
make a June one.
24.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, because we're gonna need that in a minute anyway, because we're not gonna be able to do everything that we've placed in that June in May. We'll have to do it in June.
I think I'm getting it.
Oh.
No, I got it. Don't worry.
Okay, it's like, huh. Smart. Save a little time. Great.
Okay.
Any other things that we should add to our list for May before we sort our May list?
I'm gonna
to-
just make a new page so we can see this a little bit better.
Yeah, great. Okay. Hearing nothing, I just want to add that normally at the top of every meeting, we have about 20 minutes of welcome, public comment, approving minutes, and our report. I think it's exec committee report this time, if I'm tracking correctly. So, after those 20 minutes, we've got an hour and 10. I think we're not ready to do the HSAC retreat update. We haven't even done that internally, and we were planning on doing that today, but we can't do that without Melissa. So let's move that to the June. And then let's also move the housing first report if we're not clear on that, and we may want to report to our exec first. Is that something that y'all would like a report to us of some sort before it goes to full HSAC? Because we can put that on the agenda for the next exec meeting.
Well, it's supposed to go to performance management
Yeah,
first.
that's what I was gonna say.
Oh,
yeah.
great. Okay, so once it goes to performance management, then it would go to full HSAC? Is that
Yeah,
the
I mean, probably as an informative, informational item, because there's not going to be anything to vote on in it, but more just sort of
Right.
an update. And here's how we're doing with housing first.
great? Okay, so let's not worry about putting that on an exec. We can just leave that for our next a potential item for June HSAC meeting.
Okay. And
Um,
so I have it in the right place, right?
yes.
Okay, perfect.
Sorry, it's Friday and I can speak in mumbo jumbo sometimes. Okay, so the governance changes would potentially be a voting item. And then in May. And then the other pieces, that leaves us in an hour and 10 exactly. If we add in the 20 minutes before that, which normally doesn't take the full 20 minutes, but it shows that on the agenda.
And this is the executive committee report?
I believe so. I may need somebody to check on that for me, but I believe it's executive committee, and I imagine it will be short because what I would highlight is our conversations around governance that has been kind of top of our conversation, and we'll be sharing more about that later in the meeting. And having more good discussion. And it's just 5 minutes for the executive committee report. Then it's like 5 minutes for public comment, 5 minutes for welcome, 5 minutes for approving minutes. So it ends up being a chunk of 20 minutes.
Okay, got it.
Okay, how do we feel about this order?
Looks good to me.
Okay, and then given the time and the questions from last meeting, do we feel that 30 minutes is enough around system performance? Yes, Sharita.
What's the difference between HMIS data exploration and the system performance pig in HIC? What's the difference?
Anthony, you want to take that?
Yeah, so the HMIS data exploration is around the lead agency, NCCEH, working with a few other COCs and us to explore a potential replacement vendor for HMIS.
Got it. Got it. I was just trying to remember what that was. I got
Yep.
it now.
All right.
Great. Yeah, that's a great question. I think in the agenda that goes out to everybody, hopefully the little bit of text will help people understand that difference too. Okay. If we feel good about this agenda, we can move on. Any other comments?
I will just come back. I checked with Ann Oshel. She said the 1115 waiver says statewide. And she's been in all the state meetings, and there's not been any mention of the healthy opportunity piece being a staggered rollout. That could be the case, but it would still end up being statewide.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. And if
So
we
are
want to have her come sometime, we probably should get her several months out, maybe.
So
That's not a push. That's just a statement.
yeah, I mean, I
I
agree.
just don't want us to like get everybody's hopes up and then something else happens. Because I imagine, you know, the excitement of some of the things that are in there may drive people to be, you know, eager to get a hold of it. So I just thought I heard some rumblings. That's all.
Yeah, the excitement is usually quickly tempered with who can actually handle Medicaid billing. So I mean, in all seriousness, that's why we've been looking at it so early, because we know what a
Yeah.
lift that would be for any organization. So yeah, that's I've watched the up and then the down every time, Sharita, about 4 times now.
If we can figure out how to collaborate with our health systems who have mastered the Medicaid billing system, that would be tremendous. Just a thought.
Yes. Okay, so I think what would be helpful to understand is it sounds like a presentation from Ann/Fred would take up a whole meeting. So understanding when on our calendar that would be possible, that would be helpful. And then I think also is Ann doing presentations anywhere else that we could point people to publicly, or is this like it's not really happening in a space like a Zoom unless it's being out?
It hasn't been. Everyone I've done has been in person just because of the complexity of it.
Yep.
That's a really good question. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm almost wondering if we could do a special meeting for this if we foresee it taking up a significant portion of time, to see if we could do it as a special meeting independent of our meeting, but definitely I think important to how we can work better. Just the idea.
Yeah, I like that. And I'm curious if there are other players that we can strategically invite to that as well. Russ, you look like you're gonna say something.
Well, I'm just thinking with the I'm trying to think through our capacity to dig into something deep and have good conversation. And so I'm wondering if we think through like who needs to be at the table for that conversation, because it could be pretty overwhelming for everybody to be there in the normal settings we do. So I think, you know, Shrita's idea of something extended or even in person potentially makes some really good sense, especially as we look at some of the governance pieces. Yeah, just having the right mix of people at the table, because it's really complex. I've had to hear 4 times, and I think I've got half of it in my head now. Hard to follow, and they're good explaining.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I like these ideas a lot. I think what does the ask look like to Anne that's most helpful? Is it would you be open to doing a special meeting and when would work for you? Is it better to give her a month? How do we move that forward?
It's a good question. I'd almost, I'm thinking of us being toward the end of the current cycle. It almost makes me wonder if we plan toward the beginning of the next cycle for something like that. Especially since we're about to go into COC application season.
Right.
Anthony's clapping over there.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe like a September. And if something very pressing comes up in the meantime, we could advance it, but that I'm curious what others think of doing it maybe on that timeline.
Okay, great. In September, I won't be chair, so let me check in with Ebony. Since we're moving into your space. Does that sound okay to you that there would be some sort of
Possible space, possible space, always a possibility, someone else, possible space.
Okay. So what we've talked about is that sound like it makes sense? Do you have concerns about a special meeting in September? Okay.
And who, I know we've talked a little bit about, is this like, who would the audience be for the other players? Would it be something system-wide or would it be something more narrow? And any other considerations that we need to give to thinking about it? Because something like this, I think, could also help in our collaborative application space too.
I think that's a really good question about who the other players are. And I think we need to figure that out between now and September, but
Okay.
maybe not today. So maybe we can think about that offline, and we figure out we put that as an agenda item potentially in the next exec meeting to discuss further and give people a little time to think through that.
Would there even be value in a special exec meeting to have the presentation and this group and maybe invite a couple of extra people? I mean, not unlike what happened with the DOC systems options conversation. There was like a core group and then expanded and just, in this case, take exec as the base and then add some people to hear from Ann and then see how we broaden that conversation.
Yep. I think that's another great idea. I'm really feeling like we should let these ideas marinate and come back next month. And I kind of tend to go in the same direction where starting with a smaller group and expanding helps people understand better, and helps us not get lost in conversations. Not that we wouldn't include other people, just that it helps us guide the conversation better. But let's think through that piece, and I wrote it down as another exec piece for June. All right. I want to make sure we get to our last item, which is committee leadership follow-up. It looked like our May agenda was set and the items we were talking
Oh,
about.
I'm sorry. Did I need to keep
No,
that
we're
up?
good.
Oh, okay.
I just want to, I didn't hear anything from anybody else. So I think we're good. And Anthony, if there are any follow-up questions around the agenda, y'all feel free to reach out to me.
Okay.
I know it can get tricky because that gets handed off to other people that you're not the main person for that. So just have them reach out. Okay, our last item on the agenda, which I'm thankful we have a good amount of time for, is committee leadership follow-up. Oh, and I feel like Lloyd, my lights just went off in my room. There we go. That was the Lloyd moment of the meeting. Okay, so we received a spreadsheet that shared positions, and then we did a little updating to help us have this conversation. We're having this conversation because we're thinking about who can fill roles this coming year. We have last time we talked, we have a secretary role that needs to be filled on exec. We'll have a vice chair role that needs to be filled on exec. And we're also, I've heard from Jonathan that he's also moving from that position. So we will also need a chair for that standing subcommittee of performance management. So strategically, we were looking at who is on exec and who may be able to fill those roles, and how do we maybe have some more direct asks rather than like open asks to the full committee. So, is it helpful if I pull up the edited? I'm happy to do that.
I have the
Yeah.
spreadsheet. Do you need
Oh,
that?
you have it? Will you share
Mhm.
it?
Yep.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So I want to give people space because I just shared last what we talked about. So I want to give people space to share changes, new thoughts before we dive into specifics around how we can ask new folks to fill roles. All right. Did anyone get a chance to look through this or have any thoughts around who might be good folks to start talking to and pursue to fill some of our roles?
Can you make it, zoom it in to the names more, please?
Is that better?
So I can explain this a little bit. When you see a 0.5 on positions, that means there's a proxy. And so I think one of the things we've a little bit struggled with is recognizing that we have a lot of folks that are in seats that are high ups at city county. And so is it realistic to ask them to be in a leadership position or even on a committee, I think is the other conversation we've had. So in some cases there are proxies and maybe that is more realistic, but this helps us look at that.
And if you guys need me to scroll up or down, just let me know. I don't want to. I know when you're looking at a screen and it's scrolling, it kind of drives you crazy sometimes. So
So just to play with this spreadsheet a little bit, if we're saying, can we, just for the sake of like making names pop, could we possibly colorize the city county leadership persons that we are saying we don't think that they will be able to fill those, like just color them out another color. So the names in white will just show of our options. And then as well as the folks who are holding positions now that won't be holding positions, just so we can see who pops out. Cause I mean, even when I'm looking at some of these folks, I don't even know.
yeah. So
Like,
you may have
so
to help me. Do you want all the, let's see, because a lot of these are county and city. So like these folks for sure, Shannon Trapp, for example, and her proxy Samantha Smith, that's somebody you color out, right? And Chelsea Trick and
Right,
Dejanna
right.
Freeman, council people,
Just so
right?
we can
Well-
see right now who we have as options. Commissioner Carter will know she's not running, right, for her seat again. So she's
We'll have a
gonna come off
replacement in
completely.
December for her. And I would not color out Samantha because I think the proxies do have the ability to do. I mean,
Yes,
that kind of proxy does. Maybe Deidreana doesn't.
yes,
Um,
yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Samantha could handle a committee.
And Natalie would be another one to fire.
Color out.
Yes, she's a school board member.
You think so? Because the chair
I
before
don't
her,
know, but yeah, I was
he
going to
was,
say the same thing. The
I
one
would
before her,
say-
Mr. Kaysen was a part of
Mr.
it.
Kaysen was very active.
He
So
was.
I would actually leave that one white because she
Yeah.
may be willing.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree.
Okay, change that back, sorry. All right. Is that all of-
Eliza, you're not an option, right?
I am not an option.
So that's Jonathan is not an option. So I would say let's just see who pops out after this. Angela Vick Lewis is gone, so she won't be an option.
So is that seat oh, because of a term ending, thank you.
Yes. What do we think about Lee Little?
I think attendance has been a little bit uneven, but I can't say that for sure.
And so what I would like, okay, so are the question that you're posing to us, are these any potential leadership options or
I think it would be smart
specific ones?
I think it'd be smart to start with any and then have a list that we could prioritize. And if we have a list of any, then I think that also grows your list for the following year. So identifying some folks. But I
Because
do
what I would add is that Helen has already sat in the role of chair. I've sat in the role of chair of well, she could fill another seat, but do you know if Helen is gonna be wanting to do that?
like
Chair a
don't know.
subcommittee?
I don't know. I do know that Jonathan has had some conversations within performance management, and I'm not sure if there's an update there.
Yes, I was gonna chime in. So
Okay.
I did reach out to Tracy, and she's not certain if she's got the time and ability to to be chair, but it did sound like from my email exchange with her that if she might be open to the possibility of a co-chair, but she also said she just needed to think about it. So so maybe.
Okay. And that was more based on time, Jonathan, or also like wanting someone else with
Well, based
experience?
on time,
Right,
so in
okay.
her role, she covers 7 counties. And
Mhm.
so I think she's also concerned about, being able to give the appropriate time needed
Sure.
to being a chair of a committee.
Okay, yep. All right,
Also,
so
can I,
that's a potential option. Go ahead, Anthony.
yeah, I just want to ask a question which may not be appropriate in this particular context, so please just pop me back a little bit if I need to. Abena Idiako,
Mm-hmm.
why are they in the law enforcement seat? versus a different undesignated seat?
Because they are law enforcement in a sense without, they are filling the seat that was set aside for law enforcement. It would go back and forth between the police department and the sheriff, usually the sheriff's department. Sheriff used to come. And so because they fall
Okay.
in the same bucket, broadly speaking.
Yeah,
That's what-
I asked that question because I attended a webinar like, first of all, when I think about the heart team, I don't think about law enforcement, but also, I attended a webinar, last week about law enforcement partners that are typically at the table with the COC governing board. And it ranges from, public defenders to reentry councils and a lot of other different aspects of law enforcement. So I was just curious whether or not that needed to be something
You
thought
make a
about.
good point. Well, I mean, we're very limited on the number of other designations without doing some pretty serious edits. And
Yeah,
I think in a
yeah,
very practical sense, I don't think there's been the creativity that you've mentioned about public defenders and others potentially filling that seat. It's sat open for a long, long time.
okay.
Yeah. So I think they were trying to get somebody who responds to 911 calls, in a sense, and is in that system. But that's really good thinking about broadening.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a really good thought.
Yeah, really good.
Okay, so we named Lee Little as one potential. So maybe what color do we want to highlight? Just like folks that potentially, even if I think we got to just look at folks that haven't been recently through exec.
What about Shaisha? I know that she has a lot on her plate, but assuming her new role, but just curious.
Yeah, it's potential. Shaisha is on a committee already, or
I don't think so.
I don't
It's-
think so. She's just come into her role in the last 5
okay.
months.
I think ideally we're looking for somebody that's been a part of a committee, if
But
possible.
she's been in and out involved with HSAC, and which is why
Yeah.
why she pops out to me as somebody potentially like this work is not foreign to her.
Yeah.
Whereas some of the newer folks that who have joined, they may not be as equipped or ready to take it on, or maybe able to, but don't believe that they are.
All right. I'll just slowly go back up to see the other choices again.
So what about Nick or Renee?
I think Renee could be good on the right piece. Um, Nick's even newer.
Yeah, is Nick on a subcommittee or a standing committee?
I don't think so.
Because Renee goes to one of the committees. I'm not seeing it listed that she's in a committee.
If we scroll over, I think it's listed. Oh, never
He's in
mind.
performance management.
Is that on there though?
I think maybe down. Oh, no.
Nope.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
So, Jonathan, just curious, do you think that Renee would consider stepping into the role if you are able or were able to do some mentorship of her? Is that something that you're still doing, or are you going to be like leaving HSAC?
So good question. I don't know. I can certainly ask Renee. As far as whether or not I'm staying on HSAC, I mean, as of right now, I'm still our office's representative, but that may or may not change in the fall. I just don't know yet. But I'll certainly be glad to reach out to Renee and see if she would be interested in being chair.
Is there, and Anthony, this may be something you have to go back and ask the rest of the team. Is the lead agency prepared to actually provide training and support for people on becoming chairs or becoming secretaries? Because I think sometimes there's confusion that people need to know all about the system, and honestly, they just need to know how to manage a meeting.
Yeah.
And we're almost better at times not to have advocates as the chair because they want to comment on everything versus chair. I've watched that for 20 years in different settings. So is the lead agency able to provide support for folks that maybe have the skill to manage a meeting or could be skilled up?
I, I would say yes. I think probably you would want to ask Colin that question, even though it's weird. Because I'd like to say yeah, but then I'm not sure
Understood.
what that looks like because I haven't seen how deep we get in a lot of these areas in the past year.
Right.
So I would
Right.
like, I certainly think if it hasn't been happening, it can certainly be on the radar.
Okay.
And yes, I do believe that we could put something together, but I do think it has to, it has to kind of
I would also
touch
say
Colin.
I love that idea, but I'm also curious about how across all city committees with appointees that type of PD could be helpful
Mm-hmm.
grow citizens. Like I'm thinking about like Planning Academy, right? Like there are other
Mm-hmm.
entities where and maybe
Oh,
there's a
good point.
slice of it that's specific to HSAC, but is it really like, do y'all need to create all of that? And is there an opportunity to think about this more broadly?
That's a good.
So I just wrote that down. I'm just curious. I mean, I'm thinking about like
I would like for us to have
IS
it,
and
yeah,
yeah.
because that that sort of process that Russ is talking about is also something that looks good on a collaborative application too, right?
Oh, great.
So all these, yeah, there's a lot of things that we could be doing to help boost those scores.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I don't want to put extra capacity on y'all that really should be a wider net, I think is what I'm also thinking
Yeah.
about. But I do think that there could be a piece that's specific to this
Mm-hmm.
this group that y'all would be able to do.
And for the record, we are getting another employee. I am sort of Lloyd's replacement, but the position is being filled with a new person. So there will be additional bandwidth as we do that process. So something to think about there too.
Awesome. Yeah, excited to hear that. All
Russ,
right.
are you interested in a leadership role?
I'm trying to measure where I'm investing. I mean, my
Somebody put you in green already.
I saw that. My honest answer, my heart is in us getting this ILA governance structure stuff worked out. That's where my heart is because I feel like we shouldn't even be having to have a conversation and struggle this hard. If we had a structure and we're kind of building toward it, and we're the fact that we're even having those conversations is terrific. But
Yeah.
if it helps bridge to the future, yes. Yeah, is my honest answer.
Y'all know I'm always willing to give up my seat in policy and planning. So
What about Colleen? She swung through recently. I'm sure, I mean, I've heard that Colleen has been on HSAC for quite a while, so I'm assuming that she's been chair.
she has not.
She was
Okay.
chair of the GAPS group that went on for
Okay. So that might be a good
2 or
one.
3 years. I mean, I'm just saying she did a big investment at that point. So
And Vega, what about Vega? I know Alicia has recently been chair since I've been on. Anybody know anything about Vega?
Well, she does sit on performance management, so I could certainly ask if she would be interested in chairing the group, or if this group thinks maybe she might be a better candidate for one of the open, of the 3 open leadership positions, I can certainly hold back.
I'm wondering why this list doesn't have all the
Yeah,
committees that people are serving on, yeah.
yeah, it looks like we'll need to work on updating that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Let me see if any of my folks, you have Colleen on policy and planning, and you have, Heidi was doing policy and planning,
Heidi,
and Ebony doing policy and planning. Ebony, am I missing anybody else that's that was on policy and planning? Or that is on policy and planning?
I thought, is Colleen not there with us?
yes, we have
You
Colleen.
just put it
I
on
just
there.
put it on.
Okay, that's
Um,
it.
So
and
I'm
then you
noticing,
got,
is Natalie not on any committee?
Mm-mm. No,
So-
so let me explain. I think it was because she was placed, so initially it was Giovanni Lewis. And I think she took over from, Mr. Kaysen, and she was supposed to be on another, committee, and then they switched it from Giovanni to Natalie. I don't think either she doesn't know, I don't know, but she has not been on since she's been a part of it.
Okay, so if we want to grow her involvement, is what I heard earlier. I think the first ask would be for her to join one of those committees.
Yeah,
and who is that again?
That is Natalie.
Natalie Byer.
Okay,
think
so we
she's
wouldn't
retired.
put her in green?
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
we should, if we can, we should try to put 3 people that are involved in committees. I will just say from my experience, it was a lot for me. I was not on a committee, and then I came on late as vice chair, and it was a lot for me to take on. Not that someone else couldn't do it, not that I did it well, but I think ideally, if possible, we're kind of growing people's involvement
Mm-hmm.
that way. I think particularly for Natalie, because she's an elected leader, that also feels like an important step. Okay. Anybody else that we want to identify, and then we can look at who we put in green.
Now, we did not block out Samantha Smith, but does that mean she should be in green or no?
She's also not on a committee. I think
Mhm.
she's interested in joining one. I met with her recently. But I could definitely see her being somebody that could be on a committee for a year or 2 and then take on a leadership role.
She'd be strong on policy and planning.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So
I
should
think-
we color her a different color for people we're gonna ask to join committees to
Why don't
hopefully
I just
prep them
put-
to be able to do leadership? Like, or like, what
Can
should
I
we do?
just do this?
Yep.
Yeah. And then maybe up at Natalie as well, can we make a note that says ask to join or rejoin?
For Natalie here, okay. Which one? Policy and planning or performance management?
Ebony?
I would say performance, because I'm already in policy and planning.
Excellent.
Okay, great.
Can we just assign, I'm sorry, I'm visual sometimes. Can we just assign a color to the people we're gonna ask to join committees, just so we know we need to do something with that?
Mhm.
Because it's the same color as the other stuff, it could, yeah,
Yep.
yeah, thanks.
Yeah. And I'm gonna be more neurotic. Can you put it on their names?
Yes, I
Thank
love
you.
it.
Anthony's
I love
never
it.
staying behind from the meetings again.
This is my jam, Russ. I love this stuff.
Good.
Yeah, I'm glad Trina said something, because I was like, yeah, those should be in a color. Okay, great. Vega, we didn't say anything about Vega on performance management. Is that somebody else that should be in green?
Jonathan, you gonna ask her about policy and planning, just like you're gonna ask the other person we identified?
Well, I want to make sure I'm not asking anybody that the group isn't planning to ask for one of the big three leadership spots. So if if you all wanted to ask her for for secretary, then probably that ask should come from maybe Eliza. But if we want to consider her for performance management, of course I'll be glad to ask her.
So let's talk about that piece after we get through making people green, because I think we'll be able to we'll be able to
Making people green.
decide that better.
All right.
So anyone else?
So you've got Lois, who's not on a committee.
So I think that's who Jonathan's a proxy for. Is that right?
Oh,
That's
got it.
correct.
Yes,
I'm her
got it.
proxy.
Okay. Humphrey Truitt, has been coming to HSAC, but is not on a committee.
Could we get them on a committee or have a committee discussion with them? I don't know them to know anything. Does
Yeah.
anybody know Humphrey?
No,
No, I don't know him.
but purple sounds great.
All right, and then we have Nick Periante, who doesn't appear to be on a committee.
So let's also ask. And we don't need to make all these asks at once. I think we can.
Well, I think asking people to be on a committee. So if you feel like if you gave them the option of either joining the committee or taking on a leadership role, could we do that or no?
In my ideal world, people that are purple, someone reaches out to from HSAC and gets coffee with them and starts a conversation around joining a committee.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's my ideal for that group, and the best way to engage people to potentially actually join a committee.
And then I think, Sharita, closing that gap, the people that are purple now, next year could go green or something like that, right? Once they've had some participation.
Right. So let's look at our green people.
All right. So you got Shaisha, Lee, Renee, Russ.
Okay, I'm gonna write this on my paper. Russ, Shaisha,
Renee,
Uh-huh.
Lee. Is there anybody else in green up there?
I don't know if this will, no, never mind. Okay. Yes, there are Vega, Colleen.
And Vega and Colleen, yeah.
Okay.
So I can have a conversation with Colleen, definitely.
Well, let's hold on. Let's think about what roles right now we have to fill, because that should lead to who is talking to who about what role, so we're not crossing over each other. So we've got vice chair, secretary on exec, and then we also have performance management. So the good news is we have more potential names than we have positions we have to fill. So that's great. So where do we want to start? Do we want to start by talking about secretary, vice chair, and then move to performance? Do we want to start with performance? Okay, let's start with performance. So I'm going to ask from this list, Jonathan, if you could identify I know that you said you had already talked to one
Tracy.
person, Tracy, and why is Tracy not on our list? Did I just miss her? Oh,
No,
I think it's because she's down there in yellow.
yeah, so we can turn it green. We had allocated yellow for another reason.
Right.
But let's turn that green.
I mean,
Okay.
we can always say this one that we're modifying as a separate document, right?
Yeah.
And still keep
Yes.
the prior document, but just have different labels. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Jonathan?
Yeah, so
yeah.
I can reach out to Vega and Renee. I mean, they're both on there, and see if either of them would be interested in being chair.
Okay. And
you
then,
said Vega and Renee, right?
Correct.
and you already spoke with Tracy, and Tracy said maybe.
Yeah.
Okay. And maybe as a co-chair, but currently we don't really have the ability to change our structure to co-chair, or
Correct. So what we've been doing is when I have had conflicts of schedule, she has led meetings on my behalf. And that has freed up our secretary, Shante, to be able to continue to do secretary duties without having to do both at the same time. So, if there was some sort of informal arrangement like that, she might be open to it, but I couldn't say for sure.
okay. Okay. And maybe that having conversations with Vega and Renee will help illuminate where there are possibilities for.
So this opens up another question for me. Shantae, as in Shantae from Housing for New Hope, is the Secretary for Performance Management.
Yeah.
Correct.
So Shantae would then be like a COC member
Yep.
under Housing
Mhm.
for New Hope. I got it. Okay, thank you.
She's
Okay.
not,
I mean,
but she's not, I don't know where, Anthony, just as an aside, where the list exists of who the actual COC reps are, because I know in our case, it's not her, it's Ricky.
Okay.
So anybody can be appointed who's in the COC to those committees, but like when a COC vote comes, only the rep, and I've
Right.
never seen a list of who those people actually are.
Okay.
Sorry, planting a seed for the future.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So I think what we have on the table is Jonathan following up with Vega and Renee with that ask. I think what would be helpful is if you hear anything to let us know, because a secondary ask could be potentially being a secretary for the exec. But we'll prioritize the performance piece first. So left on our list, looking at vice chair and secretary, are Russ, Shaisha, Lee Little, and Colleen. I would propose that asking Shaisha to come in to a secretary vice chair position may be not the right ask. But that is just my opinion. Maybe a leadership position at a committee might feel better. But I would also be happy to ask Shaisha that.
I think you're right, Eliza. I think if you ask her both, she'll tell you if she's gonna serve. It'll probably be in the latter one that you mentioned versus vice chair.
I would be happy though to start that conversation with her now so that if it's an ask the following year, there's a seed that's been planted, if that's helpful. And Shaisha is on policy and planning?
Right now she's not on a committee,
And,
but she has
oh,
been, I think, is what
I see. Okay.
Sharita said.
Okay, so maybe that's more of a rejoining committee question.
Mhm.
Okay.
So I wonder if we should turn her purple. Should we turn her purple? for the ask to join the committee?
I would look to other people on this call to help me with that. Because I don't know about her other involvement.
I do think it's a pretty heavy lift out the gate, so I would lean that way.
Let's do that. Okay, so I'm gonna propose ask to Colleen to be vice chair. How do folks feel about that?
I think it sounds good.
Yeah, I think she would be good. I think there's always the buried ask in there, which is to become chair the following year. So
Hmm.
Yep.
at least under current structure, I think that's the pushback. So
Sure. Okay. What, I don't know Lee Little. What committee is Lee Little on currently?
No committee, I don't
I
think.
don't think any committee.
But Lee, they've been on,
So
They-
Lee took the position, he took the spot that, oh my goodness, what was her name that retired?
Oh gosh, yeah, I can picture her. DSS rep.
I can see her too now too. Yeah.
He took
Same
that
boat.
spot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he's only been coming for like 5 months because Lee wasn't even her proxy.
Right.
She had another proxy. I can't remember who that was. I think somebody from the coordinated entry side, maybe.
I can't even think of her name right now.
No, I'm gonna scan my contacts because I still text her some.
Is it Janine?
Yeah, thank
Yep,
you.
Janine Gordon, yes.
Thank you. Oh, yes. Okay, so was Janine ever on leadership?
No.
Wasn't
But
she your
she
co-chair
said,
for policy
Janine,
and PIM?
she was on policy and planning, but Jean, she and Lee don't hold the same type of position. She was like an assistant
Okay.
DSS director. He is like a supervisor,
Gotcha, okay.
over like one of the departments. He doesn't have as high a level of a position as she did, Janine had, so.
I think Janine also proxied some for Commissioner Carter
Okay.
because I think they worked very closely.
Okay. Would it be inappropriate to ask Lee to be secretary? Or would if they'd be interested in being secretary? I think the only other crazy idea I have is
I think that you could ask him that. I think that he would, if you gave him an option, he would probably pick the lesser of the demands, like to join a committee. He would be more
Okay.
prone to do that as opposed to taking that, but
okay, so that means that we should change Lee to purple then. And Lee's not really on our list then.
I could see. I wonder about Renee as secretary. Potentially. I don't know her interest in doing that or not. I mean, I know there's a conversation about her for a committee.
Yeah.
That's probably a little more pressing.
The other thought that is not ideal, but we could ask Samantha Smith to be secretary. I know we're asking her to join policy and planning.
Yeah, I almost lean toward her being over in policy and planning just as a possible path to giving Sharita a break after half a decade.
Okay, so let's not mess with her. Okay. Is there anyone else that is not green and not purple on our list that we could put as a secretary option? Because currently we've got Renee, and we've got to we got to go back to talking about performance management because Renee was an option there.
Mhm.
If we could have one other name, that would be helpful.
But also, Jonathan really had three names for performance management, which were Tracy, Vega, and Renee.
Yes. So let's go back there and ask, Jonathan, of those three names, is there someone that you feel like would be willing to be secretary, which sets them on the path to being chair?
Well, so I haven't had a conversation yet with Shante about whether she would like to return as secretary. So I was planning to kind of see what her what her thoughts were on that. So I was thinking more in the line of asking either Renee or Vega if they would be interested in being chair. Because worst comes to worst, even if you don't have a secretary, at least the chair can get copies of the minutes or copies of the meeting transcript and can put together some minutes. So that would be my concern, is filling the chair first.
Historically, I always like to see somebody with lived experience in the line of succession for like leadership of HSAC. Angela has already done all of that, so she wouldn't, but I know that we had talked about last month adding more people with lived experience onto HSAC in general.
Mhm.
And moving forward with that. So I'm almost wondering if some of those people we had thought about appointing would like an opportunity to be in succession line for leadership. And their name is just not on the list yet. Like maybe somebody from the lead group that hasn't done something that might be one of those candidates or something like that.
I can
I
think
think
of
it's
some.
very
Oh, I'm
empowering to
sorry.
see people with lived experience actually helping do this work and helping shape the work that we do. I just think that's important. I don't know how anybody else feels about that, but I just feel like that's important.
I think the LGBTQ center isn't really represented in a seat, and does have representation on lived experience, and also might have an interest in operating at this level.
We're talking
That
about
could actually be your secretary person that would be potentially in line of succession for leadership. I personally just think that's a good idea.
I think the other thing that we can say is Russ has been secretary for 2 years. So it's possible if that is, if there's a like willingness to be a part of, but the timeline of moving up feels like it's not right, that we can move that around. It's not set. But I like this idea, Sharita. I think you're right.
Yeah, and honestly, I think I've been in for like, I think in August I'd have been in for like 20 months. So like if you needed to get someone up and running over 3 or 4 months, I could bridge for a little bit.
So so I think what I'm hearing is we should ask somebody with lived experience to be secretary. And I want to make sure that we have these undesignated seats. Do we need to vote or do anything to change them? Can we just put somebody in them?
So there is an issue in that based on I mean, we have an open, I'm going to sound like there's two things.
Yeah, say that again. That's what I forgot.
Last month, we talked about the fact that there is a county open seat for the private business sector. It has been advertised for a long, long time. The ILA absolutely gives us the ability to go to the county and say, hey, we want this replaced with another. So we could absolutely recommend somebody to the county based on the ILA to say, we want somebody with lived experience. We also have a position opening. We have the position opening with Angel Vic Lewis that somebody could be referred into. Usually if there's more than one person, my memory is that the names come back to this group to sort of make a referral or weigh in a little bit. But so there's that opportunity. The other issue is that based on what Melissa sent back, there's two kind of random other assignments that may fill those two positions that's not been monitored. One is a homeless housing provider, based on the minutes that she sent, and there was another one. I'd have to go back and look at my email. So it's not actually clear that those two are really and truly open.
This is the
And-
side.
Okay, Russ, all that you were just sharing, to make those changes or what voting needs to happen, like, I think I'm also interested in what's the path that's going to take the shortest if we know we want to fill a seat with somebody with lived experience.
So very quickly back. So according to what Melissa sent, there should be a position designated for workforce development and a homeless housing provider. And I remember somebody in workforce development being involved early on when I came 5 years ago. I've never seen anybody homeless housing provider seat filled. So unless that was undone later on. So the HSAC has the ability at any meeting to say, oh, we made this decision, we're undoing this decision, and basically vacate the designation. They can vacate the designation, any of the designations of the undesignated seats, because it's not in the ILAs. So you could say, well, both of these are open, and we just want someone to fill that. The other option is, based on the ILA, this group could, I think, make a motion, because it doesn't say how to override. It just says that you can. I think we'd be within our purview, since they didn't detail how that happens, for one of us to make a motion and say, we want this to be designated for somebody with lived experience. And then do the quick work to get somebody recommended onto it. I do know for the open city one, I know of at least one person with lived experience that has applied for the opening Angel Vic Lewis position. Sorry, I feel like that wasn't probably clear.
No, it was. I'm just feeling like we're not just asking for someone with lived experience, we're also asking for someone that will be the secretary and be new. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I am fully in agreement with what Sharita's saying. I still feel like there needs to be an on-ramp.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know with our board, we have everybody serve on committees before they're even allowed to fully be elected to the board, to make sure it's a good match and they have what they need and kind of stuff like that. I am a little hesitant to see someone jump straight into.
Right, but what?
I mean,
And I get that, but we got these list of people and we're going through those names, and we're leery about whether they'll step into a leadership role, and they've been here the longest. Like, most of the people's names that we call were people who have been a part of the committee for the longest. What do you do when they don't step up?
The broken record in Russ goes, well, we designed a system that's getting us these results. I mean, the fact that there is no turnover for these institutional positions is getting us into this very situation. There's no review, there's no term.
Isn't that up to the person that's sitting in the seat to decide whether they don't want to be here anymore or do? And how do we in our current structure, how do we reinforced, because at first, when I first came on, it was said that everybody needed to be on a committee. Now it's an option. So, and even when we're going through this list right now, we're already ruling people out based on their role that they hold. You get what I'm saying? So,
Yes, I hear you.
Yeah.
so I mean, it still goes. It's
Mhm.
two people in this situation. Now, are people just comfortable with being assigned to the seat and not really doing anything, but just sitting there and listening? And isn't it their responsibility to say, I'm not getting anything from this, or I don't feel connected to this? Can you appoint somebody else?
But I think in reality, who wants to say, I've lost my interest in working on the homeless service committee?
But they're
I mean,
not
I think
working.
I think a lot of people, if there's never, sorry, I'll use my church comparison. Sometimes it feels like you get on some groups and you're there till, at least in church world, till Jesus returns or you die. And when there's no set time, even for reflection and review of whether this is a good match, it's just kind of good practice on a board to have some level of review, even if it's just a self-reflective review. And I think that's where I mean, because y'all have gone, you straight up mentioned many people like, okay, they've already been on exec, they've already done that. Like,
Yeah.
it's without some rotation, it gets really hard.
Let me ask a
So,
question, if you don't mind, Eliza. That does happen here though, right? Like I've heard Melissa talk about, particularly with the appointments from the city and county, that if those folks don't attend a certain amount of meetings or if they are missing in action for a while, that seat goes up for review. Is that not?
I don't think
So
that's been enforced.
Okay,
it's not been closely enforced, and that's for
okay.
everybody. But I mean, Anthony, if you scan down, I think it's probably column G. The only people that have a term, there's 6 people out of this whole group that have real terms.
Okay.
yeah.
6
Got it.
positions. So everybody can just stay on and stay on and stay on and stay on. And there's
But
no
they
chance
can't-
to even reflect on whether, or there's just not even a chance for someone to say, I'm
So,
ready, or
but
for
I
other
don't
people.
think, but again, I go back to say, if that person doesn't feel like they are able to contribute anything to the group, then they need to be reevaluated, because they're sitting in that, when they first kind of came up with this structure, I was appalled by the structure, because it was a lot of people that frankly I feel like are really not invested in our folk. They're just not. And their ability or inability to participate shows that. But they're being appointed, to these seats, and the agencies don't necessarily have to appoint a paid staff person to that seat. They can appoint somebody from their board who's passionate about it. I think this goes back to, I think one of the things that we can do as an HSAC is say, we don't want you just to appoint somebody to the board to fill the seat if we have all these appointed seats. We want you to put people in these seats that are willing to work on the behalf of and contribute to the work that's being done to address homelessness in Durham County. And
so,
that person doesn't have to be a paid person. That can be somebody connected and invested in your organization in any way, so that
so,
we get people who are ready to work. So it's not, okay, this person's too busy to do this, or this person can't, or this person won't. It shouldn't be an option.
Sharita, I 100% hear you. And I think we're shifting from a conversation about what can we do now to a conversation about our structure. So what I do want to throw in there is one of the things that I've started during my term as chair is this conversation around governance and structure. And I think from my perspective, one of the ways that I can continue to contribute and would like to continue to contribute after being chair is through what I would propose as an ad hoc governance subcommittee of the exec to talk about some of this longer range stuff. Because what I've noticed is, like, when we try to talk about this and do everything else, we bop back and forth between conversations. And I think if we pull that out and are able to have a small group working on that would report to exec, we could move some of this stuff. And the nice thing about ad hoc is that it can include HSAC members. It can also include non-HSAC members. And we could have a small group kind of talking about exactly what you're talking about. And instead of the exec having to do all of that, that could be separate and then reporting to the exec. So I think these are both really good conversations, but I did want to throw that in there. I recognize that it's May, we have June. I've committed to covering August, if needed, but I'm committed if that's continued to be needed. And then I'm rolling off. So I would love to
So
move
Eliza,
that-
are you rolling off completely of HSAC, or you will still hold the seat, the appointed seat?
Yes, I will be in the appointed seat, but I will not be HSAC chair, and I will not be a chair of any other committee. But I feel that I've
But you
started.
could be.
I would like to be doing this governance work because I think I've started it, and it's the best way that I could support exec team moving forward and supporting a large chunk of work that would report to exec. I think that's the best place that I could be.
All right.
And what I don't want to do is I've started conversations and then just drop them. And if I take another role, I think that's going to be too much work for me to do both.
Well, you do realize that usually the past chair stays on executive the next year, right? So you still have a spot on executive as the past chair.
That's not in any of the governance information. That
That's
may be
what
some
we've been
private
doing.
governance.
That's why I stayed on exec, and that's why Helen was on exec.
Helen
Because
wasn't,
that
she's
was
not being chair.
that's what was communicated to me.
Okay, well, I can ask if it's in the bylaws, like that could be great, because then I could be a part of of that body, that voting body. What I'm proposing is that I would continue chair through August, and then I could support as ad hoc chair of governance, and I could work with Colin to figure out the details of that. But if we kind of start thinking about that structure now, and we agree upon that like that could be a way that some work gets pulled out of exec and could get done on the side and report to exec. That ad hoc would have no power, but it could bring forward some ideas about structure and governance that may be helpful.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think we do end up a little bit circulating on some of these conversations, because it does, I mean, they are interrelated. And I do think I mean, based on the governance document, this group can approve a subcommittee of the executive committee and appoint Eliza as chair, so that and we could set it up so that then she could go back and have conversation with Colin about who needed to be on the committee, and then appoint people to the committee to review the ILA and review the governance document. And come back with
So
proposals.
are we gonna have a separate governance group? I wasn't aware of that. That's gonna happen post Eliza's term? Is that what you're saying?
I'm proposing that the way I can continue to support after rolling off exec is through an ad hoc governance committee that would report to exec. So the ad hoc committee really wouldn't have any power. It's not a standing committee. We're not changing any structures. We would just be able to put forward some information that the exec team could respond to. And the idea would be to help move conversations forward.
Yeah. So here's how I would, I'll do this as a motion, since we're at 11 something, a bunch of us got other meetings to go to. So I would make a motion that the executive committee approves the creation of a governance subcommittee or ad hoc committee with Eliza as chair, to be populated with 6 to 8 people. and that Eliza would work with Colin to determine who the 6 to 8 people would be to review the governance document, make recommendations for updates or changes, and the ILA. I don't know, do you want a timeline for that, Eliza?
I don't
Okay.
think we need all those details. Yeah, I
Okay.
think we just need to be able to uh, start building that structure and understanding what that looks like. And I think a vote would allow us to do that.
I second that motion.
Great. Thanks, Jonathan. Any other questions? Please vote in the chat. So you can vote yes, no, or abstain. Okay, so it passes. We're still waiting on one vote, but oh, nope, there we go. I missed it. All right, so it passes. So I think what this helps us with our previous conversation is what the work of exec team will be and what the ask is for the vice chair, the incoming chair, and the secretary. And so that's my hope, is that the amount of work that it seems like can also be not as much, and that those asks can be supported by other bodies that are doing work to support those people. So to wrap this up, because I know we're over, Jonathan is going to talk to Vega and Renee. And Jonathan, when you hear back, could you please email me and let me know?
Of course.
That would be great. And then I guess, is it my role to reach out to Colleen about vice chair? And I will check in with Colin before I do this.
I'm sorry, Eliza, just to help
Yeah.
you recap. Jonathan, you were also going to talk to Tracy. Did that change?
I've already talked to her.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll work on Colleen. And then I think we're still having this question around this lived experience, possibly someone from LGBTQ Center. How do we figure out that seat? Anthony, does it make sense for me to follow up with you on that, since we were talking about the lead group?
Sure.
Okay. And then it sounds like we're going to need to vote potentially. So is it possible to do an email vote if we needed, for timing wise? Do we need to do anything today that would allow us to do an email vote?
I think we'd have to authorize it while we're together on what we'd vote on online.
Okay.
Or
That may
by
be too
email.
many pieces. Maybe. Because I don't think we're clear on how we're doing that. So I think we're going to do our best to move that. And we're going to have to wait till the next meeting to really talk about what that looks like. But Anthony, can I follow up with you on lead group and that thought? It just feels like we're not there yet to really reach out to somebody and figure out the strategy. Okay.
Yep.
All righty. And then can you also share this great color coded document with us?
Yeah, so I tried to do that, and for some reason, I guess because I was, oh, okay. It says something is preventing us from sharing. I'm not sure what, but it does say it's
Okay.
saving. So I'll make sure at the end, I'll save it and send it out to all of you.
Okay, wonderful. All right. Any other comments, questions, announcements for the good of the group before we close out? All right. I will take a motion to adjourn. It is 11:37.
I so move.
And I
Seconded.
second it. Oh,
So many seconds.
Third.
I think it was Russ, and then was it Sharita? Is that
It
you?
was Jonathan and I at the same time, so.
Well,
I
I'm
don't know.
gonna give it to Sharita. Sorry, Jonathan.
It's
It'll be
okay with me.
whoever's in the minutes from last time. Just kidding.
All right, thanks everybody, and thank you, Anthony, for doing such a good job.
Thank
You
you.
helped
Have a
us,
great
but we also
weekend.
had you sharing screens, so I appreciate it.
Thank you. No
right.
worries. And
Thank you.
Jonathan, I'll be following up with you shortly.
All right,
right.
sounds good. Thanks, Anthony.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.